You were never my future, Maya. You were just the woman standing in the way of it. Caleb Whitmore said it with one hand on the apartment door and the other wrapped around the handle of his suitcase, like he was checking out of a hotel instead of walking out of a marriage. Maya Bennett stood in the middle of their kitchen, barefoot on the cold tile, still wearing the navy sweater he once told her made her look soft. The divorce papers sat on the counter between them, clean and white and cruel under the overhead light. For a moment, she did not move. She only stared at him, trying to find even a trace of the man who used to kiss her forehead before work, the man who once promised he would never make her feel small. But Caleb's face was calm, too calm, like he had practiced this, like her pain was just one more uncomfortable detail he had already decided to ignore. Caleb, she said, her voice low, almost careful. After everything I helped you build, this is how you leave? He gave a small sigh, the kind people give when they think they are being forced to explain something obvious. You keep saying we built it, he said. But the truth is, I built it. You supported it. There's a difference. Maya's fingers curled against the edge of the counter. She felt the words land deep, one after another, not loud enough to shatter anything in the room, but sharp enough to cut through 7 years of loyalty. She remembered the late nights packing his lunch when he forgot to eat, the weekends she spent reviewing his presentations, the savings she drained so he could take risks, the parties where she smiled while men in expensive suits looked through her like she was decoration. She had stood beside him when no one knew his name. Now that people finally did, he had decided she no longer matched the picture. Caleb picked up his coat from the chair. I am not trying to be cruel, he said, which somehow made it worse. I just need a life that fits where I am going. Maya looked down at the ring on her finger. It felt heavier than it ever had. And where am I supposed to go? She asked. Caleb glanced around the apartment, at the half-empty bookshelf, the framed wedding photo turned slightly toward the wall, the plant by the window Maya had kept alive through 3 winters. You are smart, he said. You will figure something out. Then he opened the door. No apology, no hesitation, just the sound of a man leaving behind the woman who had made his life easier for years. When the door shut, the silence did not feel peaceful. It felt like a witness. Maya stood there for a long time, her chest tight, her throat burning, but no tears came. Not yet. Her eyes moved to the papers, then to the empty space where his suitcase had been. And somewhere beneath the shock, beneath the humiliation, something quiet shifted inside her. Caleb thought he had just left behind a broken woman. What he did not know was that Heartbreak had not ended Maya Bennett's story. It had just taken his name off the title page. 2 weeks after Caleb walked out, his new life was already smiling for cameras. Maya saw the first photo by accident while standing in line at a grocery store, holding a basket with eggs, coffee, and the cheapest loaf of bread on the shelf. Her phone lit up with a post from someone she had forgotten to unfollow. There was Caleb, standing on a rooftop in downtown Chicago, one arm around a woman in a silver dress, the skyline glowing behind them like the city itself had chosen his side. The caption read, "New beginnings look good on you." Maya stared at it for 3 seconds too long before locking the screen. The cashier said, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Maya blinked, forced a small smile, and said, "Yes." Sorry, but she was not okay. Caleb had not just left. He had moved on loudly, like her heartbreak was an old coat he had tossed in a donation bin. The woman's name was Brielle Carter. Maya learned that without trying, because people made sure she knew. A former event planner. Pretty. Polished. The kind of woman who laughed with her head tilted back in every picture. Caleb posted restaurant check-ins, charity dinners, company mixers, and weekend trips to Lake Geneva, always dressed like a man who had never once sat across from his wife and told her she no longer fit his future. At work, he told a cleaner version of the story. Maya and I wanted different things, he said one morning in the break room, stirring cream into his coffee while 2 coworkers listened. She is a good person, but she never really understood ambition. One of them nodded like that made sense. Another said, "That must have been hard, man." Caleb gave a quiet, practiced laugh. Hard, yes. Necessary, though. Necessary. That word traveled back to Maya through a mutual friend who thought she was helping by warning her. Maya sat in her parked car outside her apartment complex, the engine off, hands still on the wheel. "He said that?" she asked. "Maya, I am sorry," her friend whispered. "I just thought you should know what he is saying." Maya looked at the dark window of her apartment. It was only 7:30, but the place already looked empty from the outside. "Thank you for telling me," she said, then ended the call before her voice could break. That night, Caleb attended another company dinner at a steakhouse where the cheapest plate cost more than Maya's weekly groceries. He raised a glass while executives praised his discipline, his focus, his ability to make hard decisions. Brielle touched his sleeve and smiled like she had won something. Caleb liked that. He liked being seen as a man stepping into a bigger life. And when someone asked about Maya, he did not look guilty. He simply shrugged and said, "She will be fine." She was always comfortable staying small. Across town, Maya sat at her kitchen table under a flickering light, the divorce papers pushed to one side, and her old laptop open in front of her. For a long moment, she just listened to the hum of the refrigerator and the traffic outside. Then she opened a folder Caleb used to mock, the one filled with business ideas, client notes, and sketches for a service she had once dreamed of building for women-owned local brands. Her throat tightened, but this time she did not close it. She created a new document. At the top, she typed, "Bennett Creative Strategy." Her hands were still trembling, but they did not stop. Caleb was out there celebrating the version of the story where she disappeared quietly. Maya did not know it yet, but the first line of her comeback had just been written. Maya learned quickly that rebuilding did not look inspirational while it was happening. It looked like cold coffee at midnight, overdue bills stacked beside her laptop, and a phone that stayed quiet because most people did not know what to say to a woman after her husband left. Every morning, she took the bus downtown to her temporary job at a small insurance office, where she answered phones with a voice calmer than she felt. "Good morning, this is Lakeview Claims. How may I help you?" she would say, while her own life sat in pieces in the bottom drawer of her desk. During lunch, she ate peanut butter crackers in the break room and watched free business tutorials on her phone with one earbud in. At night, she came home, changed into sweatpants, and worked on Bennett Creative Strategy until her eyes burned. Her first client was a neighborhood bakery owned by a woman named Denise, who had known Maya for years. Denise slid $20 across the counter and said, "I cannot pay much, baby, but I need help getting people through that door." Maya looked at the money, then at the bakery's faded menu board and empty tables. "Keep that," she said softly. "Let me prove it works first." For the next week, Maya took photos of cinnamon rolls under the morning light, rewrote the bakery's online page, made simple flyers, and taught Denise how to post without sounding desperate. 3 days later, a line formed outside before 9 in the morning. Denise called Maya crying. "Girl, I had to bake 2 extra trays." 2. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, still in her office blouse, and pressed her hand over her mouth. It was small, so small Caleb would have laughed at it. But to Maya, it felt like proof that she had not imagined her own talent. Soon, a hair salon called, then a family-owned fitness studio, then a florist from the South Side who said, "Denise told me you make people pay attention." Maya started carrying a notebook everywhere, scribbling ideas on the train, in waiting rooms, in the grocery store parking lot. She was exhausted in a way that sank into her bones, but there was a strange peace in it. For once, the hard work belonged to her. Not Caleb's promotion. Not Caleb's dream. Hers. One rainy Thursday night, after working 16 hours between both jobs, Maya sat in her car outside her apartment and could not make herself open the door. The dashboard clock glowed 11:42 p.m. Rain tapped the windshield. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, stiff and cold. "I am tired," she whispered to no one. Then she laughed once, quietly, because saying it out loud did not change anything. Her phone buzzed. For one wild second, she thought it might be Caleb. It was not. It was an email from a local women's business association. They had seen her work for Denise's bakery and wanted to know if she could speak at a small workshop. Maya read the message twice. Then a third time. Her eyes filled, but she wiped them before the tears fell. Not because she was not hurt anymore. She was. But pain was no longer the only thing living inside her. The next morning, while Caleb sat in a glass conference room complaining that his team lacked vision, Maya printed her first real proposal at a copy shop for 12 cents a page. She held the warm stack of paper against her chest like it was something precious. Caleb once told her, "Maya, cute ideas do not build companies." He was right about one thing. Cute ideas did not. But discipline did. Hunger did. A woman with nothing left to lose did. And Maya Bennett was finally learning how dangerous she could become when she stopped asking permission to be more. The first Real win came on a Tuesday morning, and Maya almost missed it because the copier at the insurance office jammed for the third time before lunch. She was kneeling beside the machine, pulling out a crumpled sheet of paper, when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it at first. Then it buzzed again, and again. By the time she stood up, her supervisor, Karen, leaned over the cubicle wall and said, "Maya, your phone sounds like it is trying to escape." Maya gave a tired smile and checked the screen. There were 7 missed calls from Denise, 3 text messages from the florist, and an email notification from Chicago Local Business Journal. Her stomach tightened. For a second, she thought something had gone wrong. Then she opened the email. The subject line read, 10 small businesses changing Chicago's neighborhood economy. Maya stood completely still while office phones rang around her. Her name was in the article. Bennett Creative Strategy was in the article. Denise's bakery, the salon, the fitness studio, the florist, all of them were mentioned as examples of small local brands growing faster because of Maya's work. At the very bottom was a line that made her eyes blur. Founder Maya Bennett is proving that smart strategy does not have to come from a downtown agency with glass walls. It can come from someone who understands what it means to be overlooked. Maya read that sentence twice, then locked her phone and walked to the restroom before anyone could see her face change. She stood by the sink, both hands pressed against the counter, breathing slowly. The mirror showed a woman with tired eyes, a cheap blouse, and rain-frizzed hair. But for the first time in months, Maya did not look at herself and see what Caleb left behind. She saw someone still standing. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number. She answered carefully. "This is Maya Bennett." A polished voice said, "Ms. Bennett, my name is Angela Pierce. I manage community partnerships at North Star Bank. We read the feature this morning. Would you be open to discussing a paid campaign for our small business initiative?" Maya gripped the phone tighter. "Yes," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I would be open to that." Angela paused, then added, "We are not looking for a favor. We are looking for someone who knows the community. Your work feels honest." Honest. The word settled somewhere deep in Maya's chest. After the call, she returned to her desk and stared at the computer screen for almost a full minute before typing anything. She wanted to call someone. Her mother, Denise. Maybe even the version of Caleb who used to clap when she won little things. But that man did not exist anymore, and she was learning not to reach for ghosts. Across town, Caleb heard her name for the first time in a place he did not expect. He was sitting in a conference room at Whitmore and Lane, half listening while his team discussed a proposal for North Star Bank. One of the junior associates clicked to the next slide and said, "There is a small agency getting attention right now. Bennett Creative Strategy. They have strong community traction." Caleb looked up from his coffee. "Bennett." The associate nodded. "Maya Bennett. She was featured this morning." A photo appeared on the screen. Maya stood outside Denise's bakery in a camel coat, smiling beside 3 business owners who looked proud just to be near her. Caleb's fingers tightened around the paper cup. For a moment, nobody said anything to him because nobody knew they should. Then Brielle, who had stopped by to bring him lunch and liked acting as if she belonged in every room he entered, glanced at the screen and laughed softly. "Wait, is that your ex-wife?" Caleb forced a smile, but it did not reach his eyes. "It is probably a small local thing," he said. "Nothing major." But his voice had changed, and he knew it. The room moved on, yet Caleb kept staring at the empty space where her picture had been. He had told himself Maya would shrink without him. Instead, her name had just walked into his conference room without asking permission. And somewhere in Chicago, Maya printed her first paid contract, held it in both hands, and whispered, "This one is mine." Maya almost deleted the gala invitation because she thought it was spam. It arrived on a Friday afternoon while she was sitting in a corner booth at Denise's bakery, answering client emails between bites of a turkey sandwich she had forgotten to finish. The subject line read, "Invitation to the Chicago Founders and Futures Gala." Maya frowned, clicked it open, and read the first paragraph twice before the words made sense. Bennett Creative Strategy had been selected as one of 5 rising firms to be honored for its work with local businesses. Her name would be printed in the program. Her company would be introduced on stage. There would be press, investors, bank executives, and leaders from across the city. For a moment, the bakery sounds faded. The coffee machine hissed behind the counter. A little boy laughed near the window. Denise called someone's order, but Maya heard all of it from far away. Then Denise walked over, wiping her hands on her apron. "Baby, why do you look like you just saw a ghost?" Maya turned the laptop toward her. Denise leaned in, read the email, and screamed so loud a man near the door almost dropped his muffin. "Maya Bennett, do not sit there looking confused. This is your moment." Maya laughed, embarrassed, but her hands shook as she reached for her water. "I do not even have anything to wear to something like this." Denise pointed at her like she had already solved the problem. "You have 3 weeks. We will figure out the dress. You just figure out how to walk in there like you belong, because you do." Maya wanted to believe that. She really did. But belonging was not a feeling she trusted yet. For years, she had attended rooms like that beside Caleb, quiet and careful, holding a clutch, remembering names, smoothing over awkward conversations when his charm ran thin. People had asked him what he did and asked her if she was enjoying the evening. She had become an accessory in places where she once dreamed of being taken seriously. Now the invitation had her name on it, and that almost scared her more than being ignored. Across town, Caleb received a different version of the same invitation. Not as an honoree, not as a speaker. His firm had purchased a sponsor table after losing ground with North Star Bank, and Caleb was expected to attend, shake hands, and look useful. He stood near the printer when the guest list came through. His eyes moved down the page until they stopped on one line. Maya Bennett, founder, Bennett Creative Strategy. He stared at it long enough that his assistant asked, "Everything all right?" Caleb folded the paper too quickly. Fine. But he was not fine. That name had started showing up everywhere, quietly at first, then louder. A bakery, a bank campaign, a business feature, and now a gala where people who barely returned his calls were going to applaud her. That evening, Brielle sat across from him at a sleek sushi restaurant, scrolling through the event page on her phone. "So your ex-wife is being honored?" she asked, raising one eyebrow. Caleb took a sip of water. "It is a community award. Those things are mostly politics." Brielle tilted her head. "Then why do you look bothered?" He looked out the window at the traffic sliding past in red and white streaks. "I am not bothered." But the lies sounded weak even to him. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in her bedroom with a simple black dress hanging on the closet door. Denise had found it at a boutique owned by another one of Maya's clients, and it fit her like it had been waiting for her. Not flashy, not desperate, just clean, elegant, and sure. Maya touched the fabric, then looked at herself in the mirror. She thought about the woman Caleb left in the kitchen, barefoot and silent. She thought about every night she worked until her eyes burned. Then she lifted her chin. Caleb was going to walk into that ballroom, looking for opportunity. He had no idea the door he wanted open now had Maya's name on it. The ballroom at the Palmer house looked like the kind of place Caleb used to enter first. Crystal lights, white tablecloths, polished floors, waiters moving through the crowd with trays of sparkling water and tiny appetizers no one could pronounce without confidence. For years, Maya had stood beside him in rooms like this, smiling when he introduced her as his wife, then quietly disappearing while men with firm handshakes asked Caleb about markets, strategy, and growth. That night was different. Maya arrived alone. She stepped out of the rideshare, smoothed one hand over her black dress, and took one steady breath before walking through the front doors. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor. No diamonds. No dramatic entrance. No need to prove she was wealthy. She looked like a woman who had survived the worst thing someone could say about her and still decided to show up with grace. Near the sponsor table, Caleb saw her before she saw him. Or maybe she did see him and simply chose not to react. That possibility bothered him more. He stood with Brielle and 2 partners from his firm, holding a glass of club soda he had barely touched. Brielle leaned closer and whispered, "There she is." Caleb did not answer. His eyes followed Maya as a bank executive crossed the room to greet her with both hands extended. "Maya, we are so glad you made it," the woman said warmly. "Angela has been telling everyone about your campaign." Maya smiled, not the shy smile Caleb remembered, but something calmer. "Thank you. I am grateful to be here." "You earned it," the woman said. Caleb heard that part clearly. Earned it. The word landed like a door closing. People kept approaching Maya. A bakery owner hugged her. A city councilwoman asked for her card. A young founder told her, Your story made me feel like I could keep going. Maya listened to each person like they mattered. She did not perform confidence. She carried it quietly, the way some people carry a scar they no longer explain. Caleb waited for her to look over. He expected anger, maybe sadness, maybe the satisfaction of proving something. But Maya moved through the room as if his presence was only part of the wallpaper. 10 feet away, she paused beside a tall floral arrangement and laughed at something Denise said. The sound was familiar enough to hurt. Not because it belonged to him, but because it did not anymore. Brielle watched Caleb watching her. You said she was not ambitious, she said under her breath. Caleb's jaw tightened. I said she was comfortable. She does not look comfortable, Brielle replied. She looks invited. Before he could answer, the lights dimmed slightly, and the host stepped onto the stage. Conversations softened across the ballroom. Caleb turned toward the front, but his mind was still fixed on Maya. The host smiled into the microphone and said, Tonight, we honor leaders who are changing what success looks like in this city. Maya stood near the front table, hands folded, shoulders relaxed. Caleb stood near the back beside a sign with his firm's logo printed small under the sponsors. Then the host continued. Our first honoree built her company after a personal loss, using strategy, heart, and a deep belief in overlooked businesses. Please welcome Maya Bennett, founder of Bennett Creative Strategy. The applause rose around her, full and immediate. Maya walked toward the stage without looking back once. Caleb stood frozen in the dim light, clapping because everyone else was clapping, while the woman he had once reduced to a footnote stepped into the brightest part of the room. The applause followed Maya back to her table like a kind of music Caleb had never heard in her name before. She had spoken for less than 4 minutes, but the room stayed with her. She did not tell every painful detail. She did not mention the kitchen, the suitcase, or the sentence Caleb had left behind like broken glass. She simply talked about small businesses, about women who kept going when nobody invested in them, about how being overlooked could either bury a person or sharpen them. Sometimes, Maya had said into the microphone, her voice steady, the people who underestimate you are not your limit. They are just proof that they never really saw you. The room stood for her after that. Caleb stood too, because sitting would have made him look worse. But his hands came together slowly, stiffly, while something hot and uncomfortable moved through his chest. Pride was not the right word. Regret was too honest. So he called it surprise. After the program ended, people crowded around Maya. Business cards appeared. Hands reached for hers. A reporter asked if she had time for a quick interview. Caleb watched from near the sponsor table until one of his partners, Malcolm, leaned over and said, You know her, right? Caleb adjusted his cuff. We were married. Malcolm's eyebrows lifted. We're married? You never mentioned that. Caleb gave a small laugh. It was a long time ago. It had been less than 6 months. The lie sat there between them, thin and obvious. Malcolm looked toward Maya again. North Star seems impressed with her. We have been trying to get Angela Pierce on a call for weeks. Caleb heard the opportunity before he heard the warning. His old instinct rose up, quick and arrogant. He had once known every soft place in Maya's heart. He thought maybe he still did. So when Maya finally stepped away from the reporter, Caleb moved toward her with the smooth confidence of a man who believed history still gave him access. Maya, he said warmly, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. That was quite a speech. She turned. For 1 second, her eyes met his, and he saw no panic there. No shaking. No old ache rushing to the surface. Just recognition, calm and distant. Caleb, she said. Not cold. Not warm. Just accurate. Brielle had followed a few steps behind him, wearing a smile that looked more curious than kind. Malcolm stood nearby with 2 North Star representatives, including Angela Pierce. Caleb noticed the audience and decided to perform. I have to say, he continued, it is amazing seeing my ex-wife get all this attention. I always knew Maya had a creative side. The words sounded harmless, but Maya heard what he was doing. My ex-wife. Creative side. Soft little phrases meant to shrink her back into something attached to him. The old Maya might have smiled through it to keep the peace. This Maya let the silence breathe for half a second. Then she extended her hand, not to Caleb, but to Malcolm and Angela. Maya Bennett, she said evenly. Founder and Chief Executive Officer of Bennett Creative Strategy. Angela smiled right away. And the reason our small business campaign doubled engagement in 3 weeks. Malcolm glanced at Caleb, then back at Maya, recalculating the room in real time. Caleb's face tightened, but he kept smiling. Of course, he said. I did not mean to undersell it. Maya looked at him then, really looked at him, and her voice stayed gentle enough to make the correction sting more. You used to do that a lot. Nobody laughed. Nobody rescued him. Even Brielle looked down at her glass. Caleb opened his mouth, but Angela stepped in first. Maya, before you leave, we should discuss the regional expansion. We are considering lead agency options. Caleb froze. Regional expansion. Lead agency. Those were the exact words his firm had been chasing for months. Maya nodded. I would be happy to talk. Then she turned back to Caleb with a polite smile, the kind given to someone standing near the exit. Enjoy your evening, Caleb. She walked away with Angela beside her, and for the first time all night, Caleb understood the shape of what he had lost. It was not just a wife. It was not just loyalty. It was a future that had learned how to keep walking without him. Maya did not hear from Caleb that night, and that told her more than a phone call would have. He was not the kind of man who reached out when he was embarrassed. He waited until he could make it look like strategy. 3 days after the gala, an email arrived from his office with the subject line, Potential Partnership Discussion. Maya was sitting in her new shared workspace, a narrow brick-walled room above a coffee shop in River North, reviewing campaign numbers for North Star. She saw Caleb's name in the sender line and felt her stomach tighten out of old habit. Not love, not longing, just the body remembering a storm before the mind had decided the sky was clear. She opened it anyway. The message was polished, careful, and empty in the way Caleb's business writing always was. He praised Bennett Creative Strategies' recent visibility, mentioned Whitmore and Lane's deep infrastructure, and suggested a conversation around mutually beneficial opportunities. Maya read it once, then leaned back in her chair and laughed softly. Not because it was funny, but because it was so completely him. He had turned needing her into a paragraph where nobody had to admit who was standing on higher ground. Denise called while Maya was still staring at the screen. Please tell me you are not thinking about helping that man for free, Denise said, as if she could hear the email through the phone. Maya smiled. Good morning to you too. I mean it, Maya. Some people only come back when your table has food on it. Maya looked out the window at the train passing between buildings. I know. Still, she agreed to the meeting. Not because Caleb deserved it, but because her company did. A week later, he walked into her workspace wearing a charcoal suit and the same controlled expression he used when he wanted people to forget he was nervous. He paused just inside the door, taking in the exposed brick, the whiteboards, the small team working at laptops, the framed Chicago local business journal feature near the entrance. His eyes lingered on the photo of Maya beside Denise, and something in his face shifted. You have built something real, he said. Maya gestured to the chair across from her desk. That is why you are here. Caleb sat down slowly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He looked older than he had at the gala, not in his face exactly, but in the way his confidence no longer filled the room ahead of him. Our North Star proposal is in trouble, he admitted. They want community reach. They want trust. Your firm has that. Maya nodded once. And he exhaled through his nose. And Whitmore and Lane would like to partner with you. Partner, she repeated. Is that what you call it when you need access to something you dismissed? Caleb's jaw tightened. Maya, I came here respectfully. You came here professionally, she said. There is a difference. He looked down at his hands, then back at her. I was wrong about your work. The words were small, but they cost him something. Maya let them sit there. Months ago, she would have wanted those words so badly she might have accepted anything after hearing them. Now they felt late. Not worthless, but late. She opened a folder and slid a printed proposal across the desk. These are my terms. Bennett Creative Strategy leads the campaign. My team owns community messaging, vendor selection, and public-facing strategy. Your firm handles back-end reporting and compliance support. All credit is shared accurately. No personal references. No rewriting my role. Caleb scanned the page, his mouth tightening with each line. This puts you in front. Maya met his eyes. That is where the work puts me. He gave a quiet, bitter laugh, then stopped when she did not smile. You know my partners will hate this. Then they can decline. Silence settled between them, clean and sharp. Caleb looked at the proposal again, then at the woman across from him. He had come expecting some trace of the wife who used to soften hard moments for him. But Maya was not cruel. That almost made it worse. She was fair. She was calm. She was offering him exactly what he had earned, nothing more. Finally, he picked up the pen. I will take it to them, he said. Maya nodded. Do that. As he stood to leave, Caleb paused by the door. Maya, he said quietly, I did not know you could become this. She looked at him, steady and unreadable. That is because you were too busy deciding what I was allowed to be. Caleb had no answer. He walked out past her team, past her name on the wall, past the future he once thought she could never build. And for the first time, he was not leaving her behind. He was walking out of a room where she had the final word. By the time the North Star contract was signed, nobody in the room could pretend the old order still existed. The meeting took place on the 32nd floor of North Star Bank, where the windows looked out over Chicago like a promise. Maya sat at the center of the table with her proposal in front of her, her team beside her, and Angela Pierce across from her with a smile that said the decision had already been made. Caleb sat 3 chairs down, quiet in a navy suit, flipping a pen between his fingers like he needed something to control. When Angela slid the final agreement across the table, she said, Maya, we are excited to have Bennett Creative Strategy lead this expansion. Lead. The word did not need to be loud. Caleb heard it anyway. Maya signed first. Her signature was steady, dark, and certain. Caleb signed after her, not as the man in charge, not as the husband who once decided her worth, but as a supporting partner on a project her vision had made possible. Afterward, the photographer gathered everyone near the window for a press photo. Ms. Bennett, center please, he said. Maya stepped forward. Her team stood close. Angela stood beside her. Caleb moved toward the middle out of habit, but the photographer lifted one hand politely. Sir, just a little to the left. Perfect. Right there. Caleb stopped near the edge of the frame. For a second, Maya saw it happen, the quiet realization crossing his face. He was not being punished. He was simply no longer central. That was the part he could not fight. Later, while people shook hands and exchanged congratulations, Caleb found Maya near the hallway. You got what you wanted, he said. There was no anger in his voice now, only something tired. Maya looked at him for a moment. No, she said. I got what I worked for. He nodded slowly, swallowing whatever pride he still had left. I am sorry, Maya. She had imagined those words once, back when the apartment was too quiet and her heart still reached for him in the dark. She had imagined him saying them with enough regret to undo the pain. But standing there now, she understood something painful and freeing. Some apologies arrive after they can no longer change the story. I believe you, she said softly, but I am not carrying it for you anymore. Caleb looked down, and for once, he did not try to explain himself. Maya walked away before the silence could turn into something sentimental. Outside, evening settled over the city. She stepped onto the sidewalk, breathing in the cool air, watching traffic move along Monroe Street, headlights glowing against the glass towers. Her phone buzzed with a message from Denise. I saw the announcement. I am crying in the bakery. Maya laughed, and this time the tears came easily, without shame. She looked back once at the building behind her, not for Caleb, not for the life she lost, but for the woman she used to be, the one who stood barefoot in a kitchen thinking abandonment was the end of her. It had not been the end. It had been the clearing. Sometimes life removes people who cannot see your value because they would only spend years teaching you to doubt it. Sometimes the heartbreak that feels like rejection is really a rescue wearing a cruel face. Maya Bennett did not become powerful because Caleb left. She became powerful because after he left, she finally stopped shrinking to make room for a man who had already walked out. And somewhere upstairs, Caleb remained near the edge of a photograph, looking at the woman he once underestimated as she stepped into a life that no longer had space for his permission.